okay. Thanks for coming in today.
Sure.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Remember last week we discussed some issues associated with anxiety.
Yeah.
Have you been feeling since last week?
I've been better. Yeah.
Excellent. And overall, would you say you're feeling? You're feeling a bit better, or is that better than last week?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
It helped.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear. Last week, as we talked about anxiety and some of the challenges with that, we said that this week we'd talk a little bit about the cognitive model and how we can look at what we call automatic thoughts and get a bit more understanding on how they operate. They are quite challenging aspects of the human psyche. They can be a word, a phrase, or an image, and they commonly aren't on the forefront of our minds in the sense that we're not aware of them, but they are on the tip of our consciousness, so that we can be aware of the fact that they're there when we are asked about them or when we actually focus on trying to find them out. So they can be really associated with sometimes a need to have a bit of a reality check or finding out how can I change my situation, or drawing a conclusion that might actually be incorrect, even though the thought itself might have truth in it. So what I'd like us to talk about today is the cognitive model in terms of something that you would like to talk about. Does that sound okay? Or, yeah. And what would you most like to talk about today?
Being able to study when I get home from work, find that very challenging.
So you're finding that challenging, being able to study or not being able to study when you come home from work.
Yeah.
And when's the last time this happened?
Yesterday.
Just yesterday?
Yeah.
Okay. And when that happened, what went through your mind?
I guess I'm just really stressed, start feeling really overwhelmed, a lot going on.
Okay. So when you come home and you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed because you like to be able to study, but you're finding you're not able to.
Yeah.
You're feeling any other emotions in your body?
Well, I'm feeling anxious and I guess I'm tensing up. And
anxious and tense, yeah. And when you come home and you're having those thoughts about feeling stressed and overwhelmed, and those emotions of feeling anxious, what happens next?
I don't study.
Okay. So the end result, which we'd call a behaviour, is that you don't study.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you feel about that?
And then I feel worse, and then I feel even more overwhelmed because I'm falling behind, and I just get stressed about that.
Yeah. So can you see how the initial thought of being feeling overwhelmed and I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, can you see how that leads to those feelings, which then lead to that, or what I'd call an immobilisation?
Yeah.
Or an avoidance of that, and that's okay. That can be a natural response to a excuse me. Avoidance can be a natural response to a stress that we're facing.
Yeah. And
that can lead to more thoughts and more emotions that challenge us. And so you're saying what you did next is you weren't able to study. What I'd like to look at is something called pleasure versus mastery, and that involves pleasure tasks versus mastery tasks. Mastery tasks being things like work and study and things like that. And pleasure being maybe a show you'd like to watch or something entertaining. And what I'm sensing is that maybe when you come home from work and you feel like doing something enjoyable, you get these automatic thoughts of I'm feeling overwhelmed and anxious. Would that be right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're feeling like that is something you'd like to achieve as a goal, to be able to study?
Yes, definitely.
How many hours a night do you feel you'd like to be able to study for?
2 probably.
About 2 hours?
Yeah.
Okay, well what I'd like to introduce is what we call a behavioural experiment. and that is where we can test something to see whether it reduces those feelings of anxiety and being overwhelmed. How much would you say out of 100 yesterday when you had those feelings that you actually felt those feelings of being overwhelmed?
80.
About 80. And do you think that we could reduce that by implementing a strategy where you had some pleasure tasks coming in when you got home? Because what I'm sensing is that you get home and you're feeling a bit stressed out, and you maybe need to fill that pleasure cup a bit more. It might be a little bit empty because when we work we fill our mastery cup and we have a strong sense of mastery, but we also need things that we enjoy to relax us. So that feeling of 80%, I think we can reduce down. I think we can really get that down, which is the goal of what we're trying to do with the therapy. And so specifically, I think that with the behavioural experiment, maybe if we try something for, how long do you think? Maybe a pleasure experience when you get home from work should go for an hour. And how long after that do you think that you'd be able to study for before you felt you needed a break from studying?
Maybe an hour.
Maybe another hour? Okay, so you get home from work, you have a relaxing task, watch a show, etc. for an hour. And then you study for an hour, and then you have another break. How long do you think you'd need a break for after you'd studied for an hour?
Not long, maybe half an hour.
About half an hour? Okay.
Yeah.
And then you've studied for an hour, had a break for half an hour. How long do you feel that you'd need or that you would want to go for? You said 2 hours, so obviously that leaves an hour of study. Do you think you'd have any challenges in that second hour, potentially?
Well, you're starting to get tired and it can all get a bit much after a while, I guess. So.
What I'd be interested in us trying with the behavioural experiment, in addition to having a relax for an hour and then a half-hour break, is maybe bringing in someone that you really feel could give you a positive message to encourage you. Is there anyone you can think of that you would be able to imagine that come and say something, and what would they say to you?
Well, my dad was always
Your dad?
pretty encouraging to me, yeah.
Okay. What would your dad say to you to encourage you?
That I can do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your dad would come in and he'd say, "You can do it." Great. And when your dad would come in and say, "You can do it," you feel like you could perhaps get through that second hour of study?
Yeah.
And do you think maybe that would reduce those feelings of anxiety and?
Yeah, well, it's encouraging and it gives you motivation to try again.
Because you said they were about 80% before. So what do you think that would reduce those feelings down to, maybe?
Maybe, I don't know, 30?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well let's try that. So that second phase of the behavioural experiment, you can write on a card as well and keep it near you. That can be like an encouragement message that you can use to remind you. So time's flying, so let's summarise today. Last week we talked about anxiety. That was some great achievements you made, and this week we've talked about some automatic thoughts you're having associated with not being able to study, and I think we can really make some more progress with that next week as we look into how we can structure our time and get more awareness of our thoughts. And another thing to do is some deep breathing, so we can look at how we can incorporate deep breathing and a technique called mindfulness that can be really helpful associated with that.